And we are back. Welcome back to the Players You Need series, the fantasy football series where I try and build the best possible team for the upcoming fantasy football game week and challenge you guys to see if you can do any better. Now, this was a very difficult video for me to make this week for a multiple of reasons. Firstly, because I knew it would inevitably result in me having to talk about the 7-0 once again, but also because I think it's a really tough game week to prepare for. Yes, it is a double game week, but all of the teams involved aren't necessarily the best ones for picking up points. So, really interesting game week to prepare for, and yeah, we'll start with what happened last week, where, like I say, we're going to have to talk about that infamous fixture between Liverpool and Manchester United once again. But before we get into it, just a quick reminder for you to drop a like on the video if you enjoyed this series and subscribe to the channel. Let's get straight into it. So, as you can see, I was only able to get 46 from my best of team last week. Prime reason, of course, being I didn't have any Liverpool players. I really did think Manchester United were going to go to Anfield and put on a good performance, and that is why Rashford was included in my best of team for last week, and not a single Liverpool player was. That has obviously come to my detriment, but we did have some players that were a little bit of a rogue shout come good for us. Ben Chilwell picking up 10 on his return to the Chelsea side, and Brennan Johnson with a fantastic performance against Everton, picking up 13 points there. The only real disappointments were that Reece James picked up an injury before the game, and I didn't know that when I made the team last week. So if he would have been in with Chilwell from the start, we'd have got a few more points. And of course, Arsenal completely... Not that they lost the game, obviously they won 3-2, but none of the players that I predicted to do well actually ended up doing anything. So that is why we only ended up getting 46. A game week rank in the 4 millions, which is very, very poor. And like I say, essentially, if you had Liverpool players, you did well last week. If you didn't, like me, you didn't. And that means that we did have a fair few winners to last week's challenge, and here they are for you now. And again, I seem to have the game weeks wrong. It says game week 27. We will make sure that is corrected for next week. But I have to say a massive congratulations to Nick Rusher, who scored 100 points because he quite literally had Salah, Gakpo and Darwin Núñez. So fair play to him. No prizes for guessing what team he supports. But 100 points is an incredible score in a game week where the average was literally 46, 47. Let's go back. What was the actual average? The average was 43. So to get a score of 100 and even Mike Williams on 93, that is two fantastic scores from both of them. And of course, congratulations to anyone else that has made it into the winner's circle this week. Let's see what those scores have done to the overall Esso 99 league table, where you will see that once again James Morris has extended his lead at the top. Ben Otico sadly only scoring 41, meaning he's dropped from second down to fourth, and James Morris's lead now stands at over 100 points. So with not too long left in the season, is the title race already locked up? Who is to say at this point, but it is going to be very hard to track him down at this point. My own team sadly only got 43 itself. Guess what? I also don't have any Liverpool players in my main team. So sadly, I have dropped down to 18th. So hopefully I will climb my way back up once again this week. But that is the league table. And as always, congratulations to anyone that currently sits in the top 20. Now let's finally move on to my best of game week 27 team. Because like I said, this was a really hard team to build. And we'll start with the two goalkeepers, like we always do. I've gone for David Raya as my main goalkeeper. A lot of talk about him this week, saying that it is looking very likely that he will be leaving Brentford in the summer. Manchester United, the current favourites to sign him as they look for a new long-term goalkeeper. But I'm going to go for him, even though they have got 2 away games. I do think Brentford are more than capable of pulling off at least 1 clean sheet against Everton and Southampton. Not only that, he always tends to make saves, even in games where they don't get clean sheets. So I think there's a possibility you could see him scoring 6 or 7 even if they concede in both games. So that is why I've gone for Raya. My backup, I've gone for David De Gea. I think Manchester United should definitely be getting a clean sheet against Southampton. It was a toss-up between De Gea and Nick Pope, but since, I think 40% of people have Nick Pope already, I thought I'd go for David De Gea. And the other reason is because I can't guarantee that Luke Shaw is going to be in the defence this week for Manchester United. Otherwise, Luke Shaw would have been in my starting 11 for the main team. But given his performances against Liverpool and against Real Betis, I expect Luke Shaw to be dropped for Tariq Malacia, but I'm not confident enough to put either of them in the team, which is why you will see the defence on your screen now. And we have doubled down on Brighton because Brighton also have a double game week, and Veltman and Estepinian are the ones that are playing every single game. And not only that, they are contributing at the other end of the pitch as well. So potential for, I think there is a good chance you could see 2 clean sheets from Brighton this week. So that's why I've doubled down on Veltman and Estepinian. And after Steele has started playing in goal for Brighton, there is no real guarantee over which one will stay in goal for them as well. So whether it's going to be Steele or Sanchez is unclear, which is why I've doubled down on defenders. Rounding off the defence, I have returned with Kieran Trippier. I think a lot of you have kept him in your squads. A lot of you have still actually been starting him despite Newcastle's poor run of form. But at home to Wolves, you'd back Newcastle to get a clean sheet, which is why he makes the team. And on the bench, I've gone for some slightly left field ones. Pedro Porro, I have put in the team for the second time in a few weeks. Emerson Royale looks like he's picked up an injury and could miss this weekend's game. And from what I saw of the AC Milan game, even though it wasn't a good night for Spurs, they did firstly get a clean sheet. And secondly, after Porro came onto the pitch, he was taking free kicks and corners. So chances for him to contribute at the other end of the pitch as well, playing in that right wing-back position for them. So Pedro Porro is a strong suggestion for your teams this week. And I've gone for Andy Robertson. Played really well against Manchester United, picked up an assist as well. I know a lot of you tend to go for Trent when Liverpool are playing well, but I always feel like Robertson is worth it just because he is always a lot cheaper than Trent and barely misses out on the points. He only ends up like 1 or 2 points behind Trent. So I think for the cheaper price, Andy Robertson is worth it. And away at Bournemouth, there is a very good chance that Liverpool extend their run of clean sheets. Into the midfield then, and let's continue talking about Liverpool as much as I hate to do so. And you'll see that I have included Mohamed Salah and Cody Gakpo. I think that's a fair decision to do after everything that happened last week. Obviously, the 7-0 that we must once again talk about, with Salah and Gakpo both heavily contributing to that. But not only that, they did, of course, beat Bournemouth 9-0 earlier in this season. So I think Salah and Gakpo are both worth having this week. Is Darwin Nunez worth having as well? I would say potentially, but the fact that he is a striker or a forward in terms of fantasy football, and the fact that he is a lot more expensive than Cody Gakpo, is just why I have gone for Gakpo, because I think they're going to contribute equally probably again today. So I just feel like go for the cheaper option that's also going to get more points in midfield and leave some budget around for the rest of the team. Speaking of the rest of the team, you'll see I've gone for Mitoma in midfield. I always go for this guy. He is just such a talent. I really like him. I think he is going to do really, really well for the rest of this season, as well as he's already doing. It's very obvious just to say pick any of the Brighton midfielders. You could have gone for Mitoma, McAllister or Solly March, but I've gone for Mitoma purely because he's the one that I've had in my team and he's not let me down since I've been including him. And with games against Leeds and Crystal Palace, you'd expect him to be involved a lot, I'm sure. So Mitoma is my Brighton pick for this week. And I've gone for Bruno Fernandes over Marcus Rashford. I still think Manchester United players are worth having this week, but after the performance that he put in against Real Betis, back in his central position, I'm assuming and I'm almost demanding of Erik ten Hag that Bruno stays in the number 10 position this weekend. And I think he's going to be very heavily involved again. I think this is a good opportunity for Manchester United to put to bed what happened last week off the back of a great win against Real Betis to now get a big win in the Premier League as well. And I think Bruno Fernandes has a really good opportunity to be involved in everything good once again for us in that. And my final midfielder has only made it onto the bench, and that is Wilfried Zaha. The reason I've gone for him is because last time out he was playing striker for Crystal Palace. So going into a double game week against Man City and Brighton, which, you know, I'm not going to sugarcoat the fact that that is 2 very tough games for Crystal Palace. But Wilfried Zaha as a midfielder playing back up front, I think he's definitely worth a look this week if you're a bit unsure about where to put a player. The other thing about Zaha is Crystal Palace are one of the teams that are playing next week when the FA Cup has caused a lot of fixtures to be called off. So if you're thinking about someone to bring in now for a little bit more long term, I think Zaha going into a double game week and then going into a week where not a lot of teams are going to play, and Zaha definitely will play provided he doesn't get injured. I think Zaha is a very good pickup to get now, even if it's not necessarily to play this week. But I would say give him a go because he has a very good record against both opponents he's coming up against this week. And finally, we move on to the strikers. We'll start with Danny Ings, who has made a great impact since signing for West Ham. He comes up against his former club in Aston Villa. And I think with a little bit of a point to prove, Aston Villa have been pretty much solely relying on Ollie Watkins to get the goals since they let Danny Ings go. And Danny Ings has repaid the faith that David Moyes showed in him last time out, and I would expect him to continue to lead the line for West Ham this weekend. So, big opportunity for Danny Ings. I'm backing him to do the damage against Aston Villa, which I'm sure will annoy some Aston Villa fans if that is indeed the case. But at 6.4 million off the back of a brace last time out in the Premier League for him, I think Danny Ings is definitely well worth a look. On the opposite side, I have gone for a very rogue shout, and that is Wout Weghorst. Now, I know there's been a lot of talk about Weghorst, and I know this is my Manchester United bias coming into things once again, but he scored against Real Betis, and there is just that part of me that goes, when a striker scores a big goal, they then go on a run. And I'm just hoping and I'm praying, just again, this is purely Man United biased, I'm hoping and praying that that is going to be the case with Wout Weghorst this weekend. I think it is the perfect opponent to come up against for him. He's going to get opportunities to score. I think, like I say, with Bruno back in the number 10 position, we might see Sancho or other players out wide this weekend. He might experiment with a couple of other things. But I think Weghorst is going to be the main man this weekend. And I really think if it's going to happen for him in the Premier League, it's got to happen this weekend against Southampton. So I'm going to give him a chance. And he is very, very cheap. So Wout Weghorst is my suggestion, my rogue suggestion for this week. It worked out quite nicely with Brennan Johnson last week, so I'm hoping it works for Weghorst this week. And finally, we of course have Ivan Toney, which a lot of you, I'm assuming, will be going for as your captains this week. Everton and Southampton for Brentford. Ivan Toney is just playing some of the best football in the Premier League right now. He's contributing goals and assists, and we know about the faultless penalty record. And against two defences that have been very shaky right now, you'd expect Bournemouth to at least get one penalty across the two games, and Ivan Toney will inevitably take and score said penalty. So for me, Ivan Toney as captain is a no-brainer this week. The only reason you potentially not go for Toney as captain is if you really do believe Liverpool are going to hit Bournemouth for several goals once again, in which case, by all means, go for Mohamed Salah. But I'm going for Ivan Toney, and that is going to round off today's video. But before we leave, the weekly reminder that if you think that your team is capable of beating the team on your screen right now, then let me know by joining the Esso 99 League. We do this every single game week. If you think your team has got what it takes, join the league with the code on screen, and any winners will get shouted out in next week's video, as you saw in this video. Thank you very much for watching. I'll see you very soon.